What is the creepiest, most disturbing unsolved mysteries ever? The Cleveland Torso Murderer. From 1935 to 1938, there was a serial killer who chopped off the heads and appendages of 12 to 20 people and left their torsos for people to find. The famous detective Elliot Ness was one on the case, and the killer taunted him by leaving 2 torsos within full view of his office. The killer was never identified, nor were the majority of the victims. Story 2. The Setagaya Family Murder. Late on the night of December 30th, 2000, in Setagaya, Tokyo, a man broke into the house of a family of 4, strangled the son in his bed, stabbed the father, and brutally killed the mother and daughter. The killer then spent hours in the house eating their food, using their toilet, going through their paperwork like he owned the place, and eventually left, never to be found since. Story 3. The Hinterkaifeck Murder. Always freaked me out. I've read quite a bit about it, and it sounds like it was probably a neighbor. But the creepy part is that the killer was probably living and hiding out in the attic for multiple days beforehand. I read about this for the first time when I went on one of those multi-night hiking trips. I stayed in cabins the first night. There was a loft above where we were sleeping, and I stared at it all night long. Story 4. The Disappearance of Brandon Swanson. It's a lengthy case, so I won't summarize here, but he went missing while on the phone with his parents. His last known words were, "Oh shit," before the line went dead. Not a trace of him ever was found. Story 5. There's a case in my hometown of a young woman who was driving along a while on the phone with her parents. While driving, she saw a car on the side of the road with hazards and a man outside near his car looking distressed. She told her parents about this and said she was pulling over to see if he needed help. As she pulled over, the man by his car starts walking over. As she's telling her parents this, he pulls a gun on her. She starts panicking and screaming, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun! He's coming to the car!" And the line went dead. She hasn't been found since. Story 6. Technically, not unsolved since everyone can guess what happened to her, but it's one of the creepiest in my opinion. Alyssa Turney was a teenager who disappeared in 2001. Her stepfather, Michael Turney, was obsessed with her. He stalked her at work, put cameras in the vents to spy on her, and made her sign contracts to say he never touched her. Michael picked her up from school early on May 17, 2001. And well, she's never been seen since. Her half-sister, Sarah Turney, has an amazing podcast called Voices for Justice, which explains the case in great detail. And because of this, her father, Michael Turney, was arrested in August of 2020. Story 7. What happened to Pedro Lopez? He's one of the most prolific serial killers in history, claims to have murdered over 350 women and children. Since his release in 1998, his whereabouts are completely unknown. Story 8. The case of Adam immediately came to mind. Unidentified male child whose torso was discovered in the River Thames of London, United Kingdom, on 21st September 2001. Dubbed Adam by police officers, the unidentified remains belonged to a black male, and 4 to 8 years of age, who had been wearing an orange girl's shirt. The post-mortem showed that Adam had been poisoned, his throat had been slit to drain the blood from his body, and his head and limbs had been expertly removed. Investigators believe the child was likely from southwestern Nigeria, and that several days before his murder, he was trafficked to the United Kingdom for a multi-ritual sacrifice. To date, nobody's been charged with Adam's murder, and his true identity remains unknown. Story 9. In the early 80s, all within 18 months of each other, 3 paperboys in Des Moines area all went missing during their morning route. The cases have never been solved, and there are theories ranging from a pedophile ring, an ex-employee who was creepy kidnapping them, and even a lone wolf type situation. It's a bizarre case that's baffled Iowa for years. Story 10. The disappearance of the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children are siblings who disappeared in 1966. They are still to this day investigations going on to try to find the remains of these children. There have been foundations of sheds and houses dug up. The children have never been found and the suspects have never been identified. Story 11. In 1969, a student was killed in the stacks of the library at my old college, Penn State, and was found with a singular stab wound on her chest. It wasn't even late or anything, and while there were many suspects, no one was ever arrested for it. It's insane how someone could kill a person in broad daylight at a major university and get away with it. It's not really anything super crazy in comparison to other stories here. It's just weird to me personally because I would always study there and I didn't find out about it until after I graduated. Story 12. Boy in the Box. 1957 Philadelphia. Warning, graphic details. This story just makes me so mad and sticks out to me as a true crime junkie, especially with the recent case of child being found in Las Vegas suitcase that's still under investigation. Basically, a young boy whose age was estimated to be 3 to 7 years of age was found dead in a box naked, mutilated with bruises on the side of a road in Philadelphia. It was strange because the boy appeared to have been very malnourished, but was recently groomed, haircut, fingernails all trimmed. He was covered in scars, some surgical, suggesting he had previously been taken care of. Evidence suggested he was taken care of by a possible parent or guardian before he was taken into custody of his abuser. Cause of death determined to be blunt force trauma. How anyone could do something like that is just foul and disturbing, to say the very least. The worst part is, it's just a big mystery. Almost nothing to go off of. There wasn't anyone matching his description reported missing. There wasn't any record of this kid. His pure existence was a mystery. Nothing came of the case even all these years later. There were some leads, but they didn't result to much, despite heavy media coverage and a search to find who the boy was. Some theories include that his parents did this to him, which would explain why he was previously in good condition. Then they never reported him missing after they killed him. And back then, it was easier to not have a record of a child that probably wasn't born in a hospital. That, or he was a victim of sex trafficking. The cleaning and grooming of him before he was dumped wasn't to pay some sort of respect to him. It was just to remove the evidence that might have been on his body, or any defining features like his hair. What happened to him and who did this? Why the box? Why was he kept malnourished but groomed before being dumped on the side of the road? Who is he? Story 13. Jessica Chambers. She was set on fire in her car and had gasoline poured down her throat. Paramedics found her walking down the lane on fire. The only part of her body that wasn't burnt was the bottom of her feet. She did not survive. Police found a suspect but did not have enough evidence to charge him. Paramedics were so traumatized by what they saw, they had to go through therapy and broke down on stage during interviews. She tried to name her attacker, but her throat was destroyed. She couldn't be understood. Story 14. The Ibadan Forest of Horror in Nigeria. A local taxi driver goes missing and his friends create a makeshift search party and investigate a forest. Instead of finding their friend, they find an abandoned school or factory that have been remnants of a hellish torture, murder, ritual killing, and human trafficking site. 8 survivors were rescued. Numerous body parts, rotting corpses, and personal artifacts were found. The perpetrators never found, although local politicians and ritualists were suspects. While this discovery is deeply disturbing, the mystery for me is the original taxi driver still hasn't been found. Story 16. I know it's basic, but Black Dahlia is that case that gives me the creeps. For everyone who doesn't know, which I think is the majority of this case, Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, was found cut in half in Los Angeles in 1947. Most of her blood was drained out of her body. The woman who found her body thought she was a mannequin that was pale. She was cut with surgical precision. No organs harmed, and her face was also cut from the mouth to ears, making a permanent creepy smile on her face. No blood on the ground, so the body was definitely moved to the place it was found at. After she was found, I think 9 to 10 days after, an envelope was sent to the examiner with cut and pasted letters saying something along the lines of, "Here is Dahlia's belongings." The envelope contained Elizabeth's security card, birth certificate, photographs, all cleaned with gasoline to remove fingerprints. I think in March of the same year, the murderer hurt himself, leaving a note confessing to the murder and saying stuff like, "I've waited for the police to come find me. I'm too much of a coward to turn myself in. This is the best way out for me." His clothes were found, and this note probably had fingerprints on it, yet no one could identify the killer, and the killer still unidentified to this day. This case always brings me to the chills because he has to be a trained professional to make those cuts, and he has to be so sick to even think about doing it. He said he offed himself, but can we really be sure? Nobody was found. Story 17. The disappearance of Zebb Quinn. He was 18 years old when he went missing in 2000, was working his shift at a local Walmart, and afterwards wanted to look at a new car with a colleague, when he allegedly received a phone call that made him take off frantically. After that, he was never seen again. The strangest thing is that a few days later, his car was found in a parking lot, with the headlights turned on, a pair of lips, and an exclamation mark drawn on the back of the window in pink lipstick, and a live Labrador puppy sitting inside. In 2017, the colleague was arrested for his murder, but all the strange details still make no sense. Story 18. I've watched and listened to a lot of true crime over the years. One that stands out is from the reboot of an Unsolved mystery, with the man who fell through the roof of the hotel, or was thrown rather. I remember there was no scientific explanation for how he went through that. The theory that he threw himself through it was debunked. Most creepy cases have some logic somewhere in them, but this one just didn't have that, I've heard so far. I don't think there's any new developments, but anyone who's familiar, what happened? Story 19. Timothy Pitson. A kid who was taken from school by his mother, went to a zoo, a water park, and all those fun places a kid would love, and then went missing after his mother killed herself in response to her rocky marriage. She left a note saying sorry and that Timothy would be safe, but he was never found. Pretty sad considering that the father still believes he's out there, but I'm betting he's dead. Lived close to where it happened too, but not when it initially happened. Story 20. The disappearance of Lars Mittank, a German man who went on vacation in Bulgaria in 2014. He was last seen at the airport, where he was brought into a private room by airport security after his mother had called telling them her son was behaving strangely, saying there were people after him all over the phone the night before. A few minutes later, he's seen bolting, and I mean full-on sprinting out of the room without his luggage. He runs out of the airport, scaled the huge fence around the perimeter, and was never seen again. Hundreds of witnesses, CCTV footage, and a police presence, and the man still basically disappeared off the face of the earth in absolute broad daylight. Story 21. I don't know about creepy, but disturbing, yeah. The Delphi murder of Abigail Williams in Liberty, German. 2 teenage girls hiking on a trail in Delphi, Indiana. Walking across a bridge, one of them spots a creepy guy following them on the bridge and even films it. There's audio recording of suspected bridge guy ordering them to go down the hill. They were murdered and found not far from the bridge they were on. That was years ago, and the murder is nowhere closer to being solved. Even with the video of the suspected bridge guy, there has been new developments in the last year or two where people thought it might be some guy, but he got ruled out of it. Now it's a father-son suspect situation right now, and people seem to be holding out hope it's them. I personally don't think so, but in any case, it's been years now and doesn't look to be solved anytime soon. Very sad situation.